Hello, everyone. I'm going to begin the webinar now. So we were just waiting for the numbers to join us. So welcome to the MRC's Responsive Mode Research Board's Transition to the New Funding Service webinar. I'm Amy Waite, the Programme Manager for Peer Review, and this session will consist of a presentation which will give an overview and hints and tips on using the new funding service. There will also be an opportunity for you to ask questions, and please use the question and answer functionality to do this. Please don't put questions in the chat. Questions may be answered with a written response during or after the webinar, or live during the question and answer session, where we'll have a panel of MRC staff who will be on hand to take questions. This session will also be recorded and it will be made available and the Q&A published following the webinar. The funding service, or TFS, as you will hear the new funding service being referred to throughout this presentation, has been built to offer internal and external users an easier, simpler and better experience. The new UKRI funding service will replace UKRI's existing systems, including the Joint Electronic Submission System, or JES, and ultimately, the new service will support all UKRI's funding opportunities of every type and from any UKRI organisation. These changes will make it easier for researchers and innovators to collaborate, obtain guidance, and submit applications in a joined-up way. All MRC's responsive mode funding applications will now use the new service. So this includes the infections and immunity, molecular and cellular medicine, neuroscience and mental health, and population and systems medicine opportunities. I would like to stress that there are no research board calls or opportunities in the JES system. So what will be the same in the new service? There will be a number of things that will remain the same, including the expectations of what the Medical Research Council will fund. That means we will continue to fund the highest quality research. We will also continue to have the same funding opportunities and grant types. The aims, budget, project scale and duration will remain the same. The types of round of an opportunity and general timings will continue, and peer review and panel meetings will follow the same processes and funding decisions will be made in the same way. So what is different in the new service? All of the board opportunities will now close on the same date at 4 p.m. on September the 19th, 2023. I'm highlighting this particularly as previous opportunities have closed at different times, whereas in this round, they will have all opened and will close on the same dates. Please ensure you submit your application by the deadline. We will not accept applications following this. Please also remember there is a pre-application stage for programme and partnership grants, and you will need to contact the relevant programme manager at least 6 weeks before applying. So what will the new service look like? So you can search for opportunities in the funding finder, and for more information on how to use this, there is a UKRI video available, which I can share following the presentation. So once you click onto the opportunity you're interested in, it will bring you to a page like this, where you can see the timeline and all the important information that goes with it. Scrolling down the page, there is also all the information you need on who can apply for any eligibility questions and how to apply. The How to Apply section has all of the guidance which can be found within the application form, including word counts and for each section. We have 4 opportunity types for each board. So please make sure you apply to the correct type, as the application questions are tailored to the type of award you are applying to. So for example, in the new investigator opportunity, there are additional questions for you to explain how this funding will help you to transition to independence and the support your research organisation will provide to help you develop your career. And partnership and programme grants also have some very specific criteria asking you to explain why your proposed work requires this type of funding. And you can click on the Start Application button and an opportunity will take you to the funding service page where you can log in or create an account. To confirm, you do need a new TFS account, and this isn't the same as your JES account if you have one. So what's changing in the funding service for applying? Guidance and questions are consistent, concise, in one place, and reflect the assessment criteria. As soon as an application is created, your research office will have visibility of it. The new service will only ask for what we need once and when we need it. There are fewer attachments, and this will continue to decrease as we use TFS. The service has a more accessible and intuitive interface, and there are automated checks before submission. So, for example, word count, which makes it easier to use. We are also introducing a new set of common grant types, which reduces the role types from 35 to 12. Everyone previously eligible funding will continue to be so, but these roles offer greater consistency across UKRI. In all TFS applications, there is a section to list the members of the core team using these roles. So for reference, or for those who are familiar with using JES, the project lead is the equivalent of the principal investigator. The project co-lead would be the equivalent of the co-investigator. We now have a dedicated role for international co-leads or international co-investigators. And we also have a researcher co-lead, which would be the equivalent of a researcher co-investigator. There is more information on the role types on the UKRI website, including tips on equivalent role types. Some roles don't apply responsive mode, so won't appear for you to select, like fellows or doctoral students. Here you can see the application form. It has guidance for each section and is very self-contained. Only the project lead can edit these fields, so co-editing is being developed and will be available in the future. You need to work through the sections and enter your application information in boxes for all sections. Any section that does not apply to your application, simply enter NA in the text box and move on to the next section. You will see throughout that some sections allow you to upload a PDF file. So that's the vision and approach section, the project partners letter support, that all needs to be combined into one PDF. And this information is all available in the application form. If applicable, there are also PDFs for animal forms, SOCAT forms, lead agency forms, program grant renewal progress report, also needed to be uploaded as PDFs if applicable. You then need to mark the section of the application as complete when you are ready. Here are some tips for using the new funding service. You will need to register, and you can create an account by clicking on the link in the funding finder. You will need to complete your equality, diversity and inclusion information, and the application will not be sent to your research office unless this is completed. So please note, if preferred, you can prefer not to say in response to the EDI questions. Applications must be created by the project lead, or previously the PI, rather than a team member or research office staff. Research offices can only currently view the application, they cannot edit. That is the same with project co-lead. And in the funding service, research officers with an administrator account can see when an application is first created and can view all applications being prepared at their organisation. They can also return an application to an applicant for further editing. Research offices authorise and submit the application to UKRI. Please ensure, if you are going to apply, you speak with your research office to understand any internal deadlines when starting an application. You can contact the help desk by phone or email and see the contact section in the funding finder to find out who your research office contact is, although you should follow up with internally first. Please provide any feedback on anything that is not working so we can continue to improve the service. Some of the things to be prepared for. We are using the new core application questions and criteria, and all the application questions are published on the funding opportunity page. For this opportunity, you provide the vision and approach information as an attachment, which is similar to the current case for support. We are asking for resume for research and innovation information, rather than traditional CVs, and more information on these can also be found on the website. You will no longer be able to nominate reviewers, and applications can't be returned or amended after submission. Applications which are not in a suitable format to be assessed will be rejected. So here you can see an overview of the core areas for assessment. We're using the UKRI core questions with some additional context and guidance for MRC research. For example, for vision, we ask you to identify potential improvements in human or population health, whether through contributing to relieving disease or disability burden, improving quality of life, or providing benefit to the health service or health-related industry. Approach, we may ask you to specify population groups in relation to their diversity characteristics and the proposed analysis following the MRC embedding diversity in research design policy, reproducibility and statistical design. These are the core sections that all applicants will need to complete. All applicants will also need to complete basic project details such as title, duration, start date, and the primary MRC research area. A summary of the project is also required, which is up to 550 words, and that will be sent to potential reviewers and will be published if your application is successful. For the vision and approach question, you will be asked to upload a PDF. The PDF is 6 pages or 12 pages, depending on the opportunity type, as displayed here. There are additional optional pages for project plan and reproducibility and statistical design, which means for research and new investigator applications, you would have up to 8 pages. For program applications, you would have up to 14 pages, and for partnership, up to 13 pages for the project plan. If you do not want to provide recommended optional information, so that's the project plan or the reproducibility and statistical design, or it is not relevant to your application, then you must limit the length of your document accordingly and not use optional pages for anything other than the specified purpose. If you go over page length or add additional information to your application, it will be rejected. There is variation in allowed length by grant type. For all applications within the grant type, so for example, research grants, have the same page limits regardless of the project duration. The PDF file size must be no more than 8 megabytes and use 11-point font margins of 2 centimeters. All of this information is also available in the application. I would also like to highlight our new MRC policy on embedding diversity in research design. Diversity should be considered in the design of all applications submitted to closing dates after the 1st of September 2023. That means you must consider this in your application to the research boards. Applicants should consider the characteristics of the population groups or subgroups who could benefit from the research being proposed and include these groups in your application. Applications should describe the approach that they have taken to addressing diversity and promoting inclusion of these groups, and explain and justify why this approach has been taken. MRC will, as usual, fund well-designed applications where the costs are appropriately justified. You can see here this policy will be rolled out in the first application deadlines in September within the approach question. The first research board meetings will take this into account with new guidance from February 2024, and it is anticipated that a further integration into TFS will happen from 2024 onwards. If you have any specific questions about the policy, you can also see the team's email on this slide. Resume for research and innovation is used to assess capability of the applicants to deliver the project, and it replaces all CVs. You will have 1,000 words to highlight the most relevant skills and experience across your team. It is an integrated response, so larger teams will need to select what to emphasize. This may include project partners if this is particularly important. You will have an addition of 500 words, which is optional for other factors for assessors to consider, such as career breaks or impacts of COVID-19. There is more guidance and information on the UKRI website on how to complete a resume for research and innovation. Dependent on your project, you may also need to answer these application questions. There are also a number of documents that are no longer required. If we don't ask for it in the funding service, you do not need to provide it in the application. So cover letters are no longer needed. Instead, you can answer the related applications questions for any resubmissions, or you can submit sensitive information via the help desk. As discussed, CVs and publication lists are not needed and are replaced by the resume for research and innovation. For collaboration with industry, the Industry Collaboration Framework, or ICF forms, are no longer needed, and instead it is incorporated into the application as a question. Most letters of support are also no longer required, except for project partners' letters of support. And finally, the MRC unit core funding statement and equipment quotes and business case are no longer required. So what's next? If you are invited to respond to review comments, the project lead will do this in the funding service. The response length increases by 500 words for each review of your application. Future opportunities will continue to evolve as we continue to develop and improve TFS. You can check the funding finder for updates if you're interested in the next round before starting an application. So some of the possible changes are templates we are asking you to attach for in round 1 may be replaced by structured questions, for example, the animals or project partners. The vision and approach question may have a digital response with embedded images replacing the PDF attachment, and we may update page lengths, word counts for questions as we continue to streamline across UKRI. UKRI have also published resources to help users as they begin to use the new service. There are a number of videos available, which I will share, and a number which will be available soon as well. So how can you get involved and stay up to date? You can sign up for the Simpler and Better newsletter for regular updates on the new funding service, events and resources. There are regular research office webinars, and you can see the link there. You can also sign up for user research, or you can visit the website for more information. And finally, there'll be help available should you need it. Your host organisation will be able to provide advice and guidance to assist you with the creation and completion of your application. They will be able to guide you through any internal deadlines they have put in place, allowing them sufficient time to complete a review of your application before completing the final submission through the funding service. UKRI Funding Service Help Desk, the email and the number is displayed, are also on hand for support. And that's all of my presentation. I'm going to stop right there, and then we'll go to the panel to take questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, so if we start with some of the questions that have been identified to answer live. Jess, if we could go to you. The first question is, can figures be included in the vision and approach sections, whether text box or PDF?
Yeah, so essentially, I think that Amy answered that during her discussion, so that question came in before she got to that point. But essentially right now, we don't have the facility to allow people to upload figures in the text in the actual system itself. And so you use an additional PDF to be able to put non-standard text and figures into your application. But the overall length has to remain the same, I believe. Is that correct, Amy? So you can't use your 6 pages or 12 pages of your space in your vision and approach and then add an extra 6 pages of figures and things within the PDF file.
Yeah, that's correct. It needs to be within.
Yeah.
So following on, just staying with you, for information for the vision and approach, it states, please do not include any personal data within the vision and approach file. Does that mean that none of the team, in brackets PI, COI and industrial project partners, should be named in that document?
So the resume for research is the place where you should explain why your team is best placed to be able to address the research question that you've asked. You can refer to please refer to the resume for research aspects if you like. I expect that there are instances where you will need to explain who will carry out that particular bit of research, but you don't need to explain why they're the best person to be able to do that. So that's how you would that's how I would put together the vision and approach. So you may well need to identify somebody, but not with all the other personal information that goes with it.
Thank you, Jess. Maybe if we can move to Sarah Collins then. There's a few questions about the ability to edit applications. So the first one is there a plan in the future to allow co-Is to be able to access the documents so they can edit?
Yes, absolutely. Co-editing is very much on the roadmap for development for the new funding service, both co-editing by the research organisation's research office and by other collaborators in the application, whether that be co-project leads or other members of the core team. The functionality will come first for the research offices. The advice we have from the programme is that's a development that may be brought through in September this year, aware that that's very close to our deadlines for responsive mode. So my assumption would be that won't be available for this first round. And then soon following the functionality for the research offices, the collaborative tools for applicants to work together in terms of preparing applications. I haven't been given a timeline for that development yet.
And following on from that, I know you just mentioned the core team, but we have a question. Is it possible to add a research development manager who's supporting the submission to the application and to give them editing rights as we've done previously with Jez?
Yeah, as I mentioned, that co-editing feature for the research office is not currently available, but what should be provided through the service from autumn this year. Okay,
there's a few on narrative CVs. Who's planning to pick up those questions?
I'm happy to take those, Rosie.
Okay. So we are finding it very tricky to write team narrative CVs as we have to squeeze in so much detail for larger team applications. Will there be any guidance on how to approach this, as most of the guidance published so far seems to focus on narrative CVs for individuals?
Yes, we do have some more experience now of team narrative CVs being prepared. So the UKRI strategy group that's what looks after the guidance for resume for research innovation is working on some more template examples. But I think the key thing to appreciate is when we have larger teams, we're not expecting every detail of everyone's experience or skills to be included. The intention is that you select the most appropriate or pertinent examples from right across the team and use those in your resume for research and innovation.
Thank you. And I think hopefully that answers the question around just discussing the new resume format more. This person's not sure when individual versus single resumes are required or who to include when there might be large numbers.
Jess may want to take that as well.
Oh, okay, Jess. Yeah.
So just a suggestion that you work backwards from the research you're trying to deliver and explain how your team is best placed to do that and why your group that you've assembled is you're trying to sell to the researcher, the reviewers and the board members that you are the best placed group to be able to address the question that you're trying to address. So rather than working from each individual and working forward, think about what's the question you're trying to answer, work backwards. How is each member of your team contributing to that activity? And indeed, if you find you have people that aren't really contributing, they shouldn't be on the application. So that would be my best call for best advice.
Thanks, Jess and Sarah. There's a question about matched funding. So if a host institution wishes to make a matched funding contribution towards an application, such as a PhD studentship for a new investigator application, how would this be evidenced in the application if letters of support are no longer allowed?
I'm happy to take that question. So in particular, if we're talking about the new investigator research grants, there is a specific question in that funding opportunity about the research organisation support. That replaces the letters of support that were previously provided on these types of applications. So that's an opportunity for the research organisation to provide a statement from a named official, such as head of department, to confirm the support that they will be providing to the applicants, whatever support that might be, financial, training, mentorship, etc. There's details in the funding service about the sorts of things we'd like to see in that statement. The other place you can evidence such contributions is in the justification for resources section. And so again, that's a narrative section where you can talk about the costs that you're requesting for your project. But equally, if there are contributions to the project that increase the value for money, or other aspects of your project, you can detail those there in the justification of resources, should you choose to do so.
Thank you. There's another one around costings. So why is TFS asking us to complete a Word form for the FEC costings? This is a massive step backwards from JES rather than the online form. So I think that is being developed, but Sarah.
Yes, I can answer that question. And also to clarify, that may be a comment from one of our earlier funding service opportunities. These research boards, responsive mode opportunities, which are now live on the funding service, you do not need to complete an FEC template form as an attachment. The costings are entered directly into the funding service for these opportunities, and will do for all future opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Back to the kind of access questions. Apologies if this has been covered. Can the principal investigator continue to delegate admin access to support staff? I think you've answered that in the previous.
Yes, we've confirmed that
question.
that will come in the future, not currently possible. We're talking a couple of months till that's available.
Okay. And along the same lines, when will TFS include a portal login for research development teams, colleagues to view proposals, which is separate level of access to the research pre-award finance team and sign-up access?
I think that's a specific question that we can't answer here among us,
Okay.
so we'll have to follow up the answer to that question.
Okay. Sorry, there's quite a few questions in. I'm just scrolling through. Okay, I am a co-I on an application to the early stage development of the new healthcare interventions. As co-I, I cannot see the application. Also, I believe when submitted, it does not go to the head of departments. This could create problems for universities by overcommitting departments.
Well, firstly, I guess to say no applications in the old systems used to go to the head of department. They would all go through the research office in the old approach, and in this current approach as well. Everything has to go through your research office, and ultimately it's your research office that is making the submission to UKRI.
And apologies again if you covered this. Is there a timeline for allowing administrator access to edit applications?
Yeah, as previously stated, we're working towards a September target for having that available.
Great. There's quite a few additional questions that have come in around the narrative CV, which may or may not have been covered. Is there any part of the form that allows you to detail your education/professional qualifications, or does this all have to be included in the narrative CV?
Yes, that would have to be in the narrative CV. Should you feel that is important information for you to include, that's your decision. If you feel your education and qualifications are pertinent to the assessment of you as a project lead or co-lead on a research grant application.
And following on, can we provide some exemplars for Team R4RI?
Yeah, as discussed on answering a previous question, we'll be working with the UKRI strategy team who manages the R4RI guidance to include additional examples of team R4RIs. We have some obviously submitted successfully to some of our opportunities already, but it's not straightforward obviously to share individuals' application information. So we need to create neutral examples if we are to publish those. And we don't necessarily want you to be formulaic in how you answer the research, the capability to deliver a question through the resume for research and information. It's intended to be a free opportunity for you to showcase your skills and experience. So following a template isn't necessarily going to be the best solution for everybody.
Following on some more specific questions about R4RI, which may be covered in guidance, how should we approach the team narrative CV if the team haven't worked together previously?
Well, clearly you can work together collaboratively on the document to put it together before you then add it to the funding service. But obviously, if you're going to be a successful team, you are going to need to come together at some stage in terms of putting together an integrated application. So, that will be for you to decide how you can come together and share your information effectively to put your application together.
Thank you. And some submission questions. If an application deadline is missed, can the application be easily transferred to the next opportunity, or will a new application need to be created? It seems not possible to delete applications without emailing, so TFS likely to become quite cluttered.
Because you start an application through a funding opportunity, my understanding is that if you do not submit to that funding opportunity after it's closed, you would need to start again through the new funding opportunity. Obviously, you can copy information across relatively straightforwardly from one to the other, but there's no direct way in the service to move one application from one funding opportunity to another.
Thank you. This one's regarding letters of support from co-PIs, especially from external institutions. Is there really not a need to prepare anymore in the new application portal?
Letters of support in the funding service are only required from project partners, those that you have listed in the project partner section.
Okay, and leading on from that, what is the difference between project partner and the industrial collaborators? Well,
project partners can be from industry, or they can be from academia, or they can be from the third sector. So a subset of project partners will also be industry collaborators. So, for example, if you are working with industry, you would complete the project partner information for that industry partner, and may also need to go on and complete the industrial collaboration framework information for that partner if you are working with that industry partner in certain ways. And there's guidance and a decision tree which takes you through the process of determining if an industry project partner also needs to complete the industrial collaboration framework information.
Thank you. And Amy, this one's possibly for you. Will peer reviewers receive new guidance and training about assessing the new core questions?
That's a good question. We will be updating our guidance. Currently, they're still providing reviews mostly through GES at the moment, but once the deadline closes and it goes on to the new service, we will provide more guidance. There is also guidance within the reviewer form on what they should be completing, and that will also, so that is also available for reviewers. But yes, we will be updating our reviewer guidance and our applicant guidance to go alongside this and reducing it, because we won't need all of the information that is in there because it's more incorporated into the application and reviewer forms.
Thank you. Broader question. If someone makes a mistake on an application, will you return it and give them a chance to rectify, or will it be rejected outright? Possibly one.
I'm happy to answer that one. I mean, it depends what the mistake is. If you have provided an attachment which is over the page length that's permitted, if you have included information within an attachment that is not the information that we've asked for, if you have not answered a question to the extent that it's unfeasible to assess your application, then it will be rejected. You cannot complete and submit the application unless you have completed all sections of the application and marked them as complete. But clearly, for a text box, you could write one word, for example, and that might not be considered an appropriate answer to the question. And that we were unable to assess it if you had provided no resume for research and innovation, for example. So those are the situations where the application would be rejected. If they are more simple mistakes that you realise, obviously we would carry on and assess the application for you, but there is no functionality if you do pick up a mistake that you would like to correct for us to send it back to you. So you need to be very confident before you make your final submission that everything is being correctly completed and that you're happy to then send it on to the next stage.
Following on from the more broad question, I'm concerned that co-Is cannot edit the submission to this September round. Why do we need to transfer to the TFS system if the IT is not ready yet?
I can take that question. We are moving over to this new service because we need to go onto a modern platform, and our old systems will be decommissioned. So as you'll have seen with most other research councils, we are all now moving over to this new service. And we've all done our internal assessments that it is feasible and possible to use the new service at this stage. So that's why we're all collectively choosing to start to take the opportunities that this new service offers, although it lacks some features we would like to see and are working hard to develop at this stage. It does still offer a lot of benefits for you as applicants. It should be a better experience and a simpler experience for you to submit your application than the current JES system. So that's why we think it's sufficiently ready to move over now at this stage.
Two questions that relate to JES. Will existing applications on JES be migrated across to TFS?
No, they won't. All the information in JES stays in JES. There is no migration over between the two. Because your JES account is not in any way linked to a new account that you would create in the new funding service.
Which leads on to, will we still be able to access the archive of previous applications made in JES?
I think potentially for a period of time, but that would be time limited, and we'd have to take away that question for an exact time frame when JES will be permanently closed. So I'd imagine there is a need, if you want to retain that information, for you to download it into another form and save it outside of the JES system. But we're not it will be available at least until the end of this year. Beyond that, we would have to clarify for you.
Thank you. Another one about the submission process or the accounts. So as an account is created at the point of starting an application, how do co-applicants get an account? Do they get invited to collaborate through the system?
Yes, so if a project lead is setting up an application, they will complete the details of the member of their core team, selecting the individuals that they want to be their co-leads. At that point, the co-lead will receive a notification from the system saying they've been added to an application and asking them to confirm that they're aware of that. And they can create an account at that point if they wish to.
Thank you. So another question, once you start an application, oh, sorry, we've had that one answered by Sarah. Can you please enable create view-only accounts for non-pre-award staff as soon as possible for other teams involved in bid reviews?
I think that's a similar technical question on the research office side that we're not set up to answer here. We'll have to answer after the webinar, once we talk to the funding service.
Thank you. Just trying to read up duplicates, sorry. This may have been answered by Jess. Will the background of the project be included in the vision and approach? Has that been addressed in a previous answer?
Yes, certainly you can talk through the background to the project within the vision and approach if you feel that there is important background that you want to make the assessors aware of. Yes, that will be the place to put it.
Great. If we have a project partner who will be facilitating PPI, should they be listed as a project partner and have costs with this beyond travel and subsistence, or would they fall under another role?
I think at this stage, project partner is the best role. And if you can justify why they need additional costs beyond the minimum for their activities, then you can justify that.
Okay, if we start the application and don't manage to meet the first call in September, can we save the application for the next call? I think you may have addressed that by saying that you applied for the opportunity.
Yes, you would need to apply for the new opportunity if you haven't submitted to the previous one, but could bring information over. Your unsubmitted application will still be there in the funding service, but it would be a case of you deciding which of that information you want to bring across and add to the new application.
So back to the vision and approach. For the page length defined vision and approach, we had plans to upload a single PDF document within this limit. Is this okay? Or do we need to split out text to insert in the box and only put non-accepted formats, figures, etc. in the PDF? We would be very concerned about inadvertently going over the limit using a mixed format.
So to clarify there, for the vision and approach, we are expecting a single PDF, which includes all of your text and images, figures, tables that you wish to respond to the vision and approach question. You upload that through instructions in the funding service. There is also a text box associated with the vision and approach question. The only thing you should write at this stage in that text box is a couple of words confirming that you have uploaded a document. So that is the only information. We're talking 10 words or something. There is a word count limit on that field of 10 words, which will only allow you to state, I have uploaded my vision and approach file, and that should be a single file.
Thank you. I think there's a few questions along these lines. So with the institutional support statement, how does the relevant person, research director, head of departments, etc., sign off without uploading a headed letter of support?
So we are expecting the head of department or similar to prepare that statement and provide it to the project lead. The project lead is then responsible for entering that information into the funding service and naming the person that has provided that statement. We are trusting you that, that statement has been provided from a head of department or similar, and it is providing, the assessors with that guarantee. We do not think that's any better or worse than a headed piece of paper, to be honest, because, whether a letter appears in a certain format or another, it's the content of the statement that we're most interested in.
Thank you. And hopefully that also answers the question about the potential issues with commitment being amended and not being approved by the head of department.
Yes, just to add, we feel that the commitments from heads of department and others are probably more important to some of our other funding types. Apologies, I'm going slightly off topic here. We feel that they're more important in the case of fellowships, and in those opportunities, we are planning to ask for a signed letter of support that the fellow can use in the future. But for these research grant opportunities, we're comfortable with the approach we're taking, where the statement is all that is necessary. Thank you.
Back to our checking process or rejections. So I think this follows on from a previous answer. So an application will now be automatically rejected if an attachment is over the page limit rather than returned for amendment as before.
Yes, that is correct. So please do take care that you understand the instructions for page limits and stick to them.
Moving on to post-award. What's the state of play with TFS on post-award matters, please? For example, the issuing of grants, acceptance of grants, grant transfers, expenditure statements, grant maintenance requests, etc.
So from our understanding, we obviously don't have the technical know-how from the programme itself. We're aware that one of our sister research councils, BBSRC, has trialled all of those aspects, and so we're waiting to do those for the first time for ourselves. But all of those features have been built in the funding service, and as I say, are going through trials with BBSRC at the moment. We will be making awards from these opportunities around March and April 2024. So that's when we will need to be using the award and post-award features for these responsive mode opportunities in MRC.
I think following on from that question and the previous question, some universities offer match funding. How do you validate this and ensure they fulfil their pledges post-award?
Well, that's a very difficult thing for us to do, which is why we no longer have particular expectations of match funding. Clearly, it's beneficial if that's a possibility. The main area of match funding, of course, is that we fund at 80% FEC. So we know through our terms and conditions that research organisations will always be match funding the remaining 20% of the FEC that's been applied for. but contributions beyond that, we do not follow up on, and I say they do not formally form part of the assessment of the research grant.
Thank you. Are the vision and approach the same across councils? I'm reviewing an application now for another council, and this information has been entered into the text boxes, and only the images are available as a separate PDF.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Are the vision and approach the same across councils? I'm reviewing an application now for another council, and this information has been entered into the text boxes, and only the images are available as separate.
So what we're looking for in the vision and approach is very similar across the councils. As I say, there have been some variations before the embedded images is coming fully online in how we're tackling this. That's to confirm for MRC and these responsive mode opportunities. The vision and approach is a single PDF, which includes all the text and images that you want to put forward for your application.
Thank you. Are you able to tell us what the word limit for the statement from the head of department expressing institution support is? I can't currently access the form to determine this, as CSF application doesn't open until the 20th of July. Do we have those specifics, or can we follow up separately?
That sounds like that's a fellowship question, because that's what's opening on the 20th of July. So I think we'll have to answer that one separately, as I don't want to confuse the issue by talking about fellowships. For for our new investigator research grant awards, which are part of responsive mode research boards, the length of the research organisation support statement is 1,000 words.
So probably similar for this question, will PDF letters of support still be required for fellowship applications? It's obviously a fellowship question, but they mentioned that one rule with regards to host support would be good across all applications.
It might be worth just to note that on the 26th of July, we do have a fellowship webinar coming up. So if you are particularly interested in hearing about TFS for fellowships, then that might be something that it's worth coming to. It's 3 till 4. It is on the UKRI webpage. I'll post a link to it now. But yeah, we have got a webinar for fellowship. So as not to confuse anything, if you have fellowship questions, I think it might be worth coming along to that to ask those kind of questions.
Thank you. Just sorting through the questions to make sure I haven't missed any. This again may have been answered, so apologies. Will the research office have editing rights to the application in order to be able to upload costings information directly?
Yes, just repeating the advice again that functionality is coming, scheduled for around September this year.
Okay. Back to the narrative CVs. In team situations, we often find that 1 or 2 senior staff have achievements which eclipse the rest of the team and use up a disproportionate amount of the word count, but are too important to leave out. How do we manage this without appearing imbalanced?
You want me to answer that, Sarah? So I guess, again, it is a decision that the team that are leading the research need to take about the balance of specific activity required to complete the focus project that's being applied for. So not everybody's total sum activity will be of relevance to every application. So I think you need to think about the balance of funding and the balance of work and measure and appropriately allocate space in your resume for research to ensure that everybody's role is appropriately reflected.
Thank you. And continuing, should the research environment description be included in R4RI or vision and approach?
The research environment, what we're looking for is in the vision and approach section. So I'd suggest it's most appropriate to talk about your research environment in the vision and approach document.
You said the closing dates for boards will be the same going forward, so the 19th of September. Will the Better Methods, Better Research panels still only be twice a year?
Yes, as we said, the timing and schedule of our different funding opportunities in terms of the different boards panels that we offer will remain the same. So for research boards, 3 times a year, for Better Methods, Better Research twice a year. There's no plans to change those. Clearly, it will not necessarily be exactly 19th of September every year. Amy was just emphasising the point that all of our research board opportunities are closing on the same date for this particular round, because that hasn't always been the case. There has been staggering in some years between the different research boards.
If, with the new roles, we can claim estates and indirect costs for staff such as grant managers, professional enabling staff, certain technicians, etc., that will mean projects are potentially more expensive. Is there more funding available within the MRC's budget to cover the increased cost in the project?
No, MRC budgets remain the same. Costs of applications are increasing for many reasons, not only the changes to estates and indirect costs, but also inflationary costs and others. But we continue to have to manage within the budgets that we have available in this spending review.
Thank you. Where will we be able to view peer review feedback to support PI responses?
Within the funding service, you'll be able to view the reviews.
Yes, so reviews will be available to you in the funding service.
Okay. Will reviewers be given detailed information of the requirements in vision and approach? I'm concerned that international reviewers may not be familiar with the system. Did you want to take that, Amy? Or?
Sorry, say that again.
Will reviewers be given detailed information of the requirements in vision and approach? I'm concerned that international reviewers may not be familiar with this system. So I think that the information that the reviewers receive will mirror the information that's in the application.
Yeah, they will be able to click down and see what they've been asked to complete. They'll be able to see that. The reviewers will be able to see that, as well as being able to see what they are asked to complete. So that will all be viewable to them.
Will there be a new format for mid-range equipment grant applications?
If we are talking about the MRC equipment funding scheme that's assessed by the equipment panel, then yes, it's likely that funding opportunity, when it next runs, will be running on the funding service. We'll be working with other research councils that run equipment funding schemes to develop the standard questions and formats for equipment applications in the funding service.
Thank you. Moving back to the letter of support, being able to upload a head of department letter of support was previously a helpful route for applicants to obtain timely and specific confirmation of matched host funds. Will UKRI review the ability to upload letters from investigator sites, or is this not up for discussion?
Everything will be is reviewed and the success of the features evaluated. I think our ideal situation in the funding service is to provide the opportunity for the head of department or similar to come directly into the application and provide their statements there and provide an electronic signature to their statements. That's the ultimate endpoint. So no need for an old-fashioned paper-based letter. But you say, while we're getting that ability to do the e-signature and access for heads of department built, that's why we're using the approach that we have right now. But certainly this isn't the final answer for how we will have supporting information in the funding service.
I think we can ask one last question. Rosie, if you want to look for one last question before we will close the webinar. The Q&A session, I will collate that, and that will be available for you to also read the answers that we've provided and also read any questions that we haven't managed to answer in the webinar. Is there any last question that you want to ask?
Yeah, there's one about page limits. So in the vision and approach page limits, can the length of the 3 sections be different within the overall page limit? For example, for NERGs, can the methods part be more than 1 page as long as the total is still within 8 pages?
So there is flexibility within the main body of the vision and approach, which is 6 pages. You can use that space however you want to in terms of the balance of information about your project vision and the approach to the project. The 2 additional pages, which are optional, one but recommended, is an additional page to expand on your reproducibility and statistical design. And that does need to be limited to 1 page only, and a visual project plan or Gantt chart. And again, that does need to be limited to 1 page only.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar today. Just finally to say that this webinar has been recorded and it will be made available to you once it is ready, and we will also send out the Q&A. So thank you ever so much, and thank you to our panel for answering the questions. Thank you and goodbye.